Some might find this hard to believe, but Pete Hegseth actually gave a resounding speech.
Instead, we
This is
are
a
all
30
best
second
off
clip.
when,
Listen
based on
real
our
quick,
comparative
and we'll talk on
advantages,
the back end.
we all contribute to the shared goal of peace and stability. This is not a my way or the highway approach. We are ready to work with all of you, where you are, based on your own situation, your own geography, and your own cultural, political, and economic realities, to ensure that a Pacific free of any dominant hegemon is secure. And that's why a core line of effort in our national defense strategy is to increase burden sharing with U.S. allies and partners, and simultaneously empower them to contribute to our collective defense. This is no longer an afterthought. It's an essential ingredient of our strategy.
Now, depending on which media you consume, you will either see this as a good thing or a bad thing, a pro-Trump thing or an anti-Trump thing. For example, Hegseth urges Asian leaders to boost military spending against China. That was from NPR of all places, and that is the resounding truth from the speech. But if we were to look at Politico, in Trump's world, Asia increasingly faces China alone. And that is absolutely should not be the takeaway from this speech. And none of the Asian partners took that message away either. And so here is my analysis of his speech. And I'm actually going to use Al Jazeera as kind of a guiding document to discuss the analysis of his speech. So this should be very unbiased. So the title of Al Jazeera's article here is What Hegseth's Comments at Shangri-La Dialogue Say About U.S. Foreign Policy. And then the subtitle is The U.S. Defense Secretary Spoke in Singapore About America's Geopolitical Goals. And those goals he laid out in that 30-second clip, I thought, quite well, which is the U.S. approach to the Pacific is one of burden sharing and one of partnership, not one of dependency like the one that he referenced that we have with NATO. So when you hear people talk about there should be an Asia-style NATO, the reason why countries in Asia did not like this idea is because they actually enjoy a certain level of their own self-defense, and they don't want to be reliant on the U.S. And so this speech was actually received quite well across our Asian partners. One of the points he focused on was China's historic military buildup, and I quote, "There is a rightful alarm regarding China's historic military buildup and the expansion of its military activities in the region and beyond," end quote. And so he talked a lot about this. In fact, in that clip I showed you, he talked about how there should not be any hegemonic power that rises, and that was his reference to China. Now, some critics are saying, well, you didn't talk anything about Taiwan. And no, so he talked around Taiwan. He mentioned the first island chain. He mentioned strengthening partnerships with Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Indonesia. These are all the surrounding countries that make up the first and second island chains, and he was talking about strengthening those defenses. So with while he omitted Taiwan, he was talking about Taiwan. Now, he also mentioned that the focus of the Trump administration towards Taiwan has become more neutral, and the ultimate decision on the pausing of the $17 billion weapons sale will obviously be left up to President Trump. But from a DoD standpoint, or a DOW standpoint, nothing has changed. And here's a quote furthering that message, and I quote, "No state, including China, can impose its hegemony and hold the security or prosperity of our nation and our allies in question." And that was a direct shot at China. So for anybody saying that we are giving up on Taiwan, I beg to differ. And so we support them by supporting their neighbors. Japan has absolutely stepped up in the wake of certain changes in that region. South Korea has always been there, and in fact, he cited South Korea as a perfect example. And me being stationed on Korea for a lengthy period of time, working with our ROK partners, I can tell you they are ready for any kind of fight. Of course, this one's specifically targeted towards North Korea. And then on top of that, there are some agreed upon military advances. For example, South Korea has asked for nuclear-powered submarines, and I believe we are facilitating that request because the U.S. is also turning into basically, we already are the biggest arms dealer on the planet, but now we are kind of officializing that in the defense strategy. On top of that, in case you weren't aware, we have a defense strategy now or a defense agreement with Indonesia, and specifically around the Malacca Straits. And why is that important? Because it's a critical logistics choke point that China relies on for the majority of its imported goods. And now we have a thumb on the scale in that region. We already kind of did because we have a port in Singapore, but now we have reinforced that more with the other aspect, which was Indonesia. And I also worked on that as well. And so we are strengthening our partnerships and alliances and supporting their defenses by training, by engagement, and by selling them our weapons. So we are actively containing China And in fact, it can't be missed, given the fact that our actions to secure the Western Hemisphere and our current actions in Iran, both of those countries, Venezuela and Iran, had Chinese weaponry, Chinese capabilities that failed upon operation because the U.S. technology is that much superior. Pete Hegseth talked about how we are no longer peacocking, and what he meant by that is we're no longer going to conduct freedom of navigation of the seas for the purposes of just saying, look, we all recognize international laws of the sea. Instead, we're just going to quietly make our advances through strategic deterrence, through technological advances and sales. And so, again, reiterating the fact that we are becoming the world's manufacturer, selling of advanced technology, while also leading the way and building up our allies where they are. So, for all those that still fear that China could eventually invade Taiwan, those fears should be laid to rest given all of the actions and activities that have occurred over the last 18 months. It's proof positive that China is simply incapable of conducting this complex operation without facing a significant backlash, not only from the global economy, but from their neighbors and their lackluster technology. They simply don't have the technology, they don't have the capabilities, they don't have the training, and any fears that this may occur in this decade should have been wiped out. The actions of the Trump administration have clearly pushed this potential event off at least a decade, if not forever. But the only way that that is sustained is if we continue down the current path that the Trump administration has laid out in the national defense and national security strategies. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and follow if you don't already. It really helps drive the algorithm, and I hope you're having a good day.